I'm 25, and over the last 6 years, I've taken my net worth from the negatives to over $400,000 through a mix of saving, investing, and most importantly, increasing my income. And I have learned so much about building wealth through not only my own journey, but also through meeting hundreds of successful people that have been able to do it as well. And these are 25 lessons that people might not be telling you about building wealth in your 20s. So I'm sharing all of the hard truths and things that I've learned to help you get ahead. Your budget is completely useless if you have no idea how much money you're spending. For example, if you've never been to the gym before, it is a complete waste of your time to spend an hour or 2 hours planning out all of the workouts that you're going to do over the next month or the next 2 months. In that hour or 2 hours that you spent doing that, you could have been just literally going to the gym. It works the exact way with creating a budget. If you have never tracked your spending before, as in to this day, you have no idea how much money you spent last month, the last 2 months, it is a complete waste of your time to sit down and create a budget, because at the end of the day, your budget is only a plan for how much money you're going to spend in the future. So what you're going to do instead of spending the next hour or 2 hours mapping out a budget that you're probably not going to stick to, spend that hour pulling up your credit card and your debit card transactions and list out exactly how much money you spent last month, the month prior, and even the month before that. You need to get a clear picture of how much money you've been spending over the last 2 to 3 months to see, are you spending more money than you're bringing in consistently? Find a tool. You can use a blank Excel spreadsheet, but you can do this in my budget planner as well. In the budget setup tab, list out your categories, but then don't worry about filling out the budget setup tab, because again, creating a budget right now is not going to be very impactful. Go to the monthly tab. So if it's April right now, go back to the March tab and pull up all of your transactions and list out every single thing that you spent your money on in the month of March. Stop asking the questions that don't matter. Over 20,000 people have purchased my budget template over the last couple of years. Come to realize is that a lot of people focus on the 10% questions, so the questions that are going to make a 10% impact, and they're not focused on the things that are actually going to make an impact. For example, I'll get a lot of questions that are like, well, if my paycheck hits on the 28th, does that go into this month's budget or next month's budget? Truthfully, it really doesn't matter. If you get paid on the 28th this month and the 28th next month, add it to whatever month you want to, just make it consistent and move on. And that brings us to start focusing on the things that actually do make a big impact. Your budget is a really good example of this. Again, like I was saying, your budget is really just a plan for what you want to do in the future. So spend 10% of your energy creating a budget, but then spend 80 to 90% of your energy tracking your spending to make sure that the money that you're spending is less than the amount of money that you're making every single month. If you did spend more than you made, why is that? Do we need to lower your fixed expenses? Do we need to get your discretionary spending under control? The thing that actually does make an impact is, how much money did I make last month and how much money did I spend? And is the amount of money that I spent lower than the amount of money that I made? The money has to come from somewhere. This is a really good mindset thing that I like to remind myself. For example, if you did not save for a vacation, but you take the vacation, where did the money come from? It has to come from somewhere. I feel like a lot of people do this, and I used to do this myself, but they kind of lie to themselves almost with how much money they're spending. I did this for the longest time way back in college, and I would go on a big shopping spree, and well, I didn't have the money for that, so my budget is totally wrecked, and try again next month. You don't realize how many months you're actually doing that throughout the year, to where you're never actually tracking how much money you're spending. Your ego controls, I swear, 99% of your decisions, and it is ruining your life and your wallet. This is true for things like your spending decisions, your career decisions, and your business decisions. Spend money on things that we don't care about to impress people we don't care about. We let other people's perceptions of us dictate what we're going to do in our career, whether that be going the corporate route and taking out a bunch of college debt because that's what we feel like society has deemed the best route. So many people would rather choose getting a college degree and getting into a ton of college debt to make a 40K corporate salary, because they think that people respect that more than going into a trade right out of high school and immediately starting to make money. I heard this on a podcast 4 or 5 years ago, and this really stuck with me. They were saying, you graduate from college at the age of 18, and over the next 4 years from 18 to 22, getting into $25,000 of debt per year. So you're graduating at 22 with 100K in debt, versus let's say you go into a trade or do something else right out of high school and immediately you start making, let's say 40 or 50K. You live at home for those 4 years, your expenses are super low, and you're able to invest $25,000 per year. So by the age of 22, you actually have 100K invested versus having 100K in debt. That 100K invested by the age of 22 can turn into $2.2 million by the age of 62, so 40 years later, without investing another dollar. And then the third way that we let our egos dictate our decisions is our business decisions. And I know I catch myself doing this all the time. The metrics that we're focusing on aren't the right metrics, because they're the vanity metrics, the ones that kind of show other people our credibility. So I know for me, I catch myself focusing on things like likes and views, things that literally don't matter when the metrics that actually do matter are impact. How much of an impact are we making on other people? Conversions, revenue. All of these decisions are driven by your ego. And once you can recognize that, you can get ahead. Always put a price on your time and make sure you factor that cost in when you're making a spending decision. For example, I spend a lot of money in a lot of different categories, but one thing that I really try to limit is spending money on beauty treatments, because not only am I spending the money, but I'm also spending my time having to go to the hair salon, get my nails done, spend a lot of time getting things like Botox and filler. It's all your time. So yes, you're spending the money, but the final cost is actually a lot higher because you're spending your time as well. You cannot follow what everyone else is doing with their money because everyone else's financial situation is pretty messed up. For example, when I was touring colleges, I really wanted to go to the University of Pittsburgh, and my parents agreed to take me on a tour there. But while we were on the tour and I was falling in love with the campus, my parents on the tour told me, Erin, there's no way you're going here. You're not going to be able to afford it. And my response to my parents was, I'll just take out loans for it. Everyone gets into six-figure student loan debt. Luckily, I had parents that told me it was really dumb to get into six-figure student loan debt for basically a business degree. So I ended up going to a university that only put me into $38,000 worth of student loan debt. And that put me in a really good spot financially compared to a lot of my peers. The moral of the story is you can't do what everyone else is doing, because here's what everyone else is doing. 34% of Americans have $0 in savings. 66% of millennials have zero retirement savings, and 38% of households have revolving credit card debt. But it's always important to remember that you don't actually know how everyone else is doing it. If you can't manage the money that you're making right now, how are you supposed to manage your money when you 10x your income? There's a really big trap that a lot of people find themselves in, which is that they say they're going to start saving and investing and taking their finances seriously when they increase their income. One of the absolute best things that I did for myself was I started becoming financially literate and taking my finances seriously in college, because even though my income was a lot lower than it is today, my expenses were also a lot lower. So I could practice building those better money habits on a much smaller scale. I learned to do things like track my spending, set up auto savings, start investing, because if I would have waited until I graduated and life gets really hectic, all of a sudden I'm making more money, but I'm still living paycheck to paycheck and I can never get ahead. Only 10 to 20% of your energy should go toward managing your money, and the rest of your energy should go toward increasing your income. That 10 to 20% is going to build your financial foundation, and that is super important. After you get your system set up and build good habits, it's time to move on and focus on things that are going to make a bigger impact quicker. You will get to a point where you need help from experts, but that point is probably further along than you think it is. I have almost $200,000 invested in the stock market, and I have never officially worked with a financial advisor. This definitely isn't to say that you can't meet with a financial advisor until you get to a certain point, but I do feel like I hear a lot of young people saying, I can't start investing until I find a financial advisor, and that's absolutely not true. There are a lot of financial advisors out there that will kind of prey on young people and prey on how much they don't know, to the point where you're going to someone to try to learn how to start investing, but all of a sudden they're selling you a bunch of products that you probably don't need. Investing, especially when you're just getting started, is very simple. A lot of the apps out there today make things super straightforward and they're very user-friendly. But if you do want to talk to an expert before you get started, it's important to find someone who's not going to earn commissions based on the products they sell you. So you're looking for someone who is a certified financial planner. They're a fiduciary, meaning that legally they have to have your best interests in mind, and they are a flat fee advisor. So you're going to pay them for their time. They're going to give you the advice, but they're not going to earn any commission. This is not sponsored, but I do have a referral that I'll leave in the description. But the company Nectarine has a really great site. You pay $150 to meet with a financial advisor for 1 hour. That's it. If you want to set up more recurring meetings after that, that's fine, but you're not going to get someone that's incentivized to sell you products that you don't need. Unless your net worth is paying you money every single month, it literally means nothing because you still have to work. For example, your primary home, especially if you own your home outright so you don't have a mortgage, that's going to make your net worth very high, but that's not an income producing asset. It's not paying you money every single month. In fact, even if you don't have a mortgage, you're still paying money for that home every single month for upkeep and maintenance and all of that. Totally fine to have assets that don't produce income, but it's also important to remember why your net worth matters. The book Rich Dad Poor Dad talks a lot about income producing assets, so assets that actually do pay you money every single month, and how instead of being super focused on your net worth, focus on your income producing assets, and the number that you're tracking should be how much money you're making from your income producing assets every single month. I have an entire video on financial freedom and how I'm working to achieve it, and you can watch that here if you're interested. Wealth snowballs, and it starts to snowball very fast. Once you pay off your debt, the money that you were paying toward your debt every month can now go toward your other financial goals like investing more. They always say that your first 100K is the hardest, and that is absolutely true. My net worth hit 100K in August of 2023, and now it's April of 2025, and it's over 400K. So it is definitely hard to make that initial progress, and you might feel like it's impossible, but it gets so much easier over time. Money you make in your 20s is exponentially more valuable than money you make in your 30s. Money that you make in your 30s is exponentially more valuable than money you make in your 40s. This is obviously only true if you're being smart about the money that you do make. You hear a lot about celebrities and pro athletes in their 20s who make millions in their 20s, but they end up filing for bankruptcy. So you do have to take the money that you make and put it to work. To kind of show you what I mean by this, if you invested $500 a month for 40 years, that would equal around $1.5 million, and you only invested $240,000 of that. Now, if you waited 10 years to start investing, started investing at the age of 35, but you're making more money, so now you're investing $1,000 a month from the age of 35. $1,000 a month for 30 years would only be $1.3 million, and you've invested $360,000 total. So you can kind of see here how waiting 10 years to start investing, even if you invest more, you'll end up with less. Increasing your income is so important, but if you still have to show up every single day in order to make that money, you don't have a business, you have a job. But I think this is a really good mindset thing to keep in mind when you do start increasing your income. I do have to show up actively for this today, but what are the systems that I can build? What can I delegate or outsource to begin kind of stepping away and generate profits without doing things day to day? Money is an exchange of value, so provide value to someone else and you will always make money. You do this by providing a small amount of value to a large amount of people, or you can do this by providing a large amount of value to a small amount of people. So as you're thinking about this, a couple things to keep in mind. What do you have that someone else wants? Whether that be knowledge, time, skills. But then also remembering that absolutely everything in life is a numbers game. To make $1 million, you would have to sell 5,000 of a $200 product or sell a $10 product 100,000 times. I'm always running through this exercise because looking at the numbers makes everything feel more objective and makes me feel like literally anything is possible. It is a complete waste of time to focus on anything that you can't control. Yes, it might be true that wages are low compared to the cost of living today. The job market might suck. Interest rates might be high. It's really hard to spend virtually no energy focused on those types of things because those things are out of your control. Any time spent thinking or harping on things that are outside of your control is only slowing you down to make progress on the things that you can control. Stop assuming that everything is fake or that something won't work for you. If you see someone finding success doing something, even if it's something that you've never really heard of, instead of just assuming that one, it can't be true or it couldn't be true for you, instead challenge yourself to learn more about that thing. Even if it's not something that you end up pursuing, that's going to lead you down a rabbit hole to learn about different ways to make money, different businesses that other people are starting. You have to be okay with making no money for a lot of upfront work at the beginning. I've been monetizing my social media channels for the past 4 years, and I get a lot of questions on my TikTok specifically asking, how long is it going to take me to start making money from social media? With anything that you're trying to do, you mentally have to be okay with making no money for a long period of time until it eventually does work out for you, because eventually it will, but everyone's timeline for that looks very different. This is why I don't really think that it's a great idea to start any type of business venture or side hustle from a place of needing it to work out as soon as possible. You need time to be able to practice, learn, and pivot, and you're not going to be able to do those things clearly and make those decisions if you're crunched on a timeline for how quickly this needs to work out. Building something is hard. Nurturing something that you've already built becomes a lot easier. It's easy to self-sabotage, and when things start to work out, you think that you need to do more because it gets easier, when in reality, instead of doing more, you need to double down on what's actually working. For example, when I started my TikTok account 4 years ago, I posted over 3 videos a day for the first 3 months, and it was hard. I didn't know what I was doing. It took me so long to film a video. It definitely worked. I grew the community. I had a really engaged audience, and then I started to slow down because naturally nurturing something takes a lot less energy than building something. Once I started to slow down, I naturally thought, okay, I have a lot more time on my hands. So what did I do? Instead of doubling down on what was actually working, I started an Instagram account. I started a podcast. I took on more freelance clients. The most successful creators and also business owners are people who do not do this. When things start to work and they start to become easy, they don't diversify, they double down. You will make a lot more money being really good at one thing rather than being decent at a lot of things. Everyone is multi-passionate, and that's totally okay, but the thing that you end up monetizing should be the thing that makes the most impact to someone else. Everything else you can still be passionate about and they can still be hobbies, but it doesn't have to be the thing that eventually becomes your thing. It's important to ask yourself, how can you become the person for one small thing instead of trying to compete on the big playing field with all of the huge players? yours. You probably don't know just how many opportunities there are out there to make money. You have to listen to other people's stories. When I was in high school and college, I thought the only career path was going to college, getting a corporate job, working that corporate job until retirement or the day that I die, because I didn't know anyone that did literally anything else. It wasn't until I started consuming a lot, I started listening to a lot of podcasts, I started reading a lot of books on real estate investing, business, I started following a lot of successful people on LinkedIn and hearing other people's stories to get an idea of just how many options there are out there. And last, and maybe the most important, what are you consuming? I can't be the only one that has seen the TikToks that are like, this is what my rich friends talk about at dinner, and this is what my non-rich friends talk about at dinner. They're using the analogy that rich people talk about things like books they're reading, things they're learning, conferences they're going to, and their non-rich friends are talking about things like reality TV, celebrities, TikTok drama, and they gossip. What you consume is ultimately what you become, so it's good to do a little life and kind of digital audit around what you're consuming on your social media channels, your podcasts, the people that you surround yourself with. If you want to start consuming more and better content from successful people, grab my free CEO podcast playlist. I'll leave it in the description of this video to get rich in 2025.